Hey everyone, it's Ethan King with Lancaster Archery Supply. Today we're going to take a look at the AAE Bitz Upgrade Knob. So what makes it an upgrade over factory is the knock receiver itself is going to be a little thicker than the factory knob. That way your knock fits in there with no play at all. That way you get a more consistent fletching. Also, you're going to have a screw on the top that you can loosen and be able to spin that knock free of the receiver. So traditionally with the Bitzenberger, if you damage one fletching, you're gonna have to strip all 3 or 4 and redo the entire arrow. But with this, you'd be able to put your arrow back in there, loosen that screw, put your clamp on your fletching, and then tighten that back down in place, so that way you only have to do one vein repair at a time. Another good upgrade on this versus the original is the detents are going to be more precise, so there's not going to be any slop in the knob when you actually rotate it fletching to fletching, but it's still going to be drilled for 3 fletch, 4 fletch at 90 degrees, and 4 fletch at 75, 105, so the X-wing pattern. So to put the AAE upgraded knob in your Bitzenberger, the first thing you're going to do, you don't need your clamp. What I like to do first is loosen the retainer screw. So what this screw does is keep the actual knob in the fletching jig itself. That way it doesn't come out and you lose your spring and detents. So for that, you're going to need a flathead screwdriver. And you don't have to take this all the way out. You can just loosen it till you feel that receiver moving around in there. And then that's why I like to have a paper plate, is because if you pull this out over top of the paper plate, that ensures that you're not going to lose the spring and detent that are in there. And then you can remove your set screw that locates your fletching, so your 3 or 4 fletch. And then I use a pick. You don't have to use a pick. You can just use another Allen wrench. And I'm going to push that ball out of there, and then the spring. That's why I like to have the paper plate, because it makes sure you're not going to lose any of that. And then to put the knob back in, all you're going to do is slide it in. And then when I put them in, because you have this groove here that this screw rides in to keep it located, you just want to pull it out a little bit to ensure that you're not going to put this screw into the side of the knock receiver, because if you put a little dent in there, when you're spinning it, you could accidentally stop in that dent instead of the actual detent, and that's going to mess up your fletching job. So you can see that there's still a little wiggle there, but I have that all the way in, so that's good. And out of the box, a Bitzenberger is going to come with 3 set screws, 3 springs, and 3 ball detents. These are my personal fletching jigs, and I always just have 1 in there, and I keep the extra ones in a baggie. That way, if they wear out, I can replace them. But then this is where you would take the ball and put it in whatever hole you want to. So for this application, we're going to do 3 fletch, so that's going to be the top hole. So you drop your ball back in there. You take your spring and put it in top of the ball. So then you'd be able to take your set screw and turn it back in on top of your spring and ball detent. And you don't want to turn that down in there too tight, because what that's going to do is put too much spring tension on the receiver itself and wear it out. So you can turn it and just adjust that to get a nice click. So that has a nice click to it. And what I mean by wearing it out is you can see on this receiver how the hole is elongated. That's just from too much spring pressure, and this being in there for, I'm not sure how many years I've had this particular jig, but it just is going to elongate that hole over time and make it sloppy, and your fletchings aren't going to be as consistent. With the AAE Upgrade knob, it's going to be a hard anodized aluminum, so it's not going to wear out as fast, but you still want to make sure that you have that spring tension set right so you don't prematurely wear out those detents. So now to get into the feature of the AAE Upgrade knob. So a good feature with this, like I mentioned, is being able to set your knock. So as you can see, my knock is straight up and down, and this particular arrow has its spine aligned. So you would be able to put it in, and then to align the spine, I would take my clamp and put it on without a fletching in it. And then that's when you could turn the arrow to align your spine or your odd fletching. So now my nock is indexed with what would be your cock feather or your odd colored feather. So you would take your fletchings, put them in your clamp at whatever mark you want. You can see I've had these for years. They got writing all over them. You take your glue, and then when I'm fletching, I just make a couple dots down it, and then take the tip of my glue bottle and rub it down. And then your clamp butts up to the back of your fletching jig, and then you just apply some pressure. Let it sit for a second. And I also like to keep Q-tips handy. The Q-tips are gonna make cleaning up the glue a lot easier. Because once you let this sit for a second and you pop that out, you can take the Q-tip and just clean up the excess glue along the fletching. That way it's all nice and clean. And then you would just keep fletching the arrow. So that's when you would move to your odd color. All right, so there we got the last fletching on. So you can see we have a nice consistent fletch all the way around. This particular jig is set up left helical, but you're also going to be able to get a 4-fletch option with that jig. So this would be the 90-degree option. This is right helical, this is left helical. It's however you have your jig set up. So your nock is indicated to your cock feather just like we set it up in the jig. But say you go out and shoot and you need to turn your nock a little bit. So your nock turns, well now it's not set up to the jig, and then you accidentally shoot a fletching off. You can quickly come back to your jig, put your arrow in there, and be able to come around to your set screw, loosen the set screw. So now the arrow freely spins without turning the knob. Take your clamp, clamp it back onto an existing feather or vane. Make sure that that's lined up, and then tighten your set screw back down. Take your clamp off, and then when you rotate to the next position, you're going to be able to put that particular fletching right back on, so you don't have to do all three, you can just do one at a time. All right guys, so that was just a quick demonstration on how to install the Bitzenberger knob and use the Bitzenberger knob to your advantage so you have to spend less time fletching and more time shooting. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more like it, subscribe. And if you would like to be notified whenever we release new product videos, hit the notification bell. And if you have any more questions, visit us at lancasterarchery.com.